Hi everybody, Gareth, sportsintelligence.com. So what is the role of the sports intelligence practitioner or perhaps the sports psychologist? Well, before we go into detail, let's talk about some of the shifts and changes that we've seen in, let's say, the last decade or so. One, there's been so much more money invested in sports than ever before. It's big business. Maybe that's why you're tuning into this. Perhaps it's your potential career. There are many more professional athletes than before. Big time. The numbers are astounding. Sport is so much more competitive. And from an increasingly younger age. I know of kids who are 8 years old and who have agents. Sports seasons are longer, with less time for off-season recovery. The world has become more accessible and athletes have so many more opportunities to travel outside their geographies to compete. There are more stakeholders and role players surrounding athletes and teams. Support teams are multidisciplinary. You're listening to one of them. I'm part of a team that works with individuals and with teams. Science, empiricism, data, facts, information, research, which is driving them, is considerable. The role of media has changed. Social media, other kinds of media, the influence and impact on athletes from the public through different channels has been significant. Many athletes have become brands in themselves. Technology is now at the center of refereeing, of training and competition. So as the world becomes so much more complex and competitive, so will the internal world of you, of the athlete. Sport's no longer a linear, mechanistic process. 1 + 1 = 2. That's what I mean by a linear process. It's complex. It's an intricate system of levels and layers and multifaceted networks. That's what I spoke about in one of my earlier inputs on this channel. Higher levels of complexity require different levels of thinking and understanding. What we did 50 years ago no longer applies to the extent that it did all those years ago. The concept of sports intelligence is about multiple layers and different perspectives, and it resonates with me because it mirrors the contextual complexity of the external world of sports. Sports intelligence seems to know about how everything comes together and expresses itself. So it's not just about training or component 1 or component 2. It's about how they interface and interact and how we as athletes and coaches of those athletes make this happen. To make it happen, we need to make sense of it. For us to make sense of it, we need to understand that game, that athletic endeavor. To make better sense of it, we need to know ourselves. So from a psychological perspective, maintaining or unlocking this intelligence in athletes requires less the teaching of skills and more of a dialogue and a reflection in creating the right space for these to emanate and to flourish. Deeper level questions need to be asked of the athlete, such as, how do I better understand myself as a person and my talents as an athlete? How do I understand my current context and its challenges? What are the ebbs and flows, the highs and lows and unique patterns that are creating my story? Am I able to cope with the good times and the bad times with equal velocity? What am I learning from how it's unfolding? And how do I hold all of this together? Because there is so much happening. I think athletes that endure for many years, for decades perhaps, and how they hold it together for such a long time continues to impress me. So while the basic skills that we've covered in the components improving confidence, goal setting, teaching athletes how to control performance anxiety are not redundant. In my view, the role of the sports psychologist is changing. It's becoming something else. A separate intervention with the athlete or the team, for that matter, no longer serves the integrity of the system. If us as sports intelligence practitioners or psychologists or sports psychologists works in isolation with an athlete or a team, they're kind of in between things, and in between the bits and pieces that make up the intelligence of the system, and those, I fear, are lost. The sports psychologist's role and contribution would better serve the athlete if it were a meticulously constructed intervention that dovetails and collaborates with all members of the multidisciplinary team of experts surrounding the team. So what that means is that the coaches, the biokineticists, the physiotherapists, the nutritionists, the medical staff, the specialists in particular disciplines within that sport, the chiropractors, the dietitians, the organizers, the strategists, the marketers, the managers, that system, that team around the competing athlete or around the competing team is crucial, that they are aligned and that they are of one mind and one purpose. It's no point engaging with individuals separately, whether it's team players, athletes, or whether it's support team players. In other words, the experts, engaging with them independently. And I see so much of this. And it's so hard and it's so difficult to get everybody onto the same page, as some people might say. Getting alignment and ensuring cohesion, not only amongst players, that's hard enough, but amongst all role players with different agendas, with egos, with different histories, backgrounds, expectations, needs, wants, values. That's the challenge that the sports psychologist and sports practitioner is working with today.